Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
The Herald, Monday the 9th of May 2022. News. BMA leader warns Scotland headed for two-tier healthcare. This article is by Helen McCardle. A top doctor said he would be very nervous if he needed NHS treatment or social care right now, amid spiralling pressures on the system. Dr. Graham Unson described the situation in A&E departments as horrific and said he fears the health service is heading towards a twin-track system where people who can afford to pay will get better care. Dr. Unson, a consultant paediatrician based at the Borders General Hospital, was speaking to the Herald following his final meeting as chair of the BMA's Scottish Consultants Committee. He will step down from the post he has held since 2019 in September, amid a crisis which he says has no end in sight. He said, "The sad truth is that a lot of the things we were warning about in 2019 are still the problems that we face today, but all of these have been magnified by the pandemic and now the attempt to recover. We went into the pandemic with a workforce that was running on empty. Now we're trying to play catch up from a very difficult starting position." Dr. Unson said pensions agency data for Scotland indicates that the number of medics retiring doubled in 2021 compared to 2020, and he fears that the trend is only likely to accelerate unless more is done to tackle a long-running pensions tax issue, which can see senior clinicians penalised with annual bills running into tens of thousands unless they retire early or reduce their working hours. That's something we thought was going to happen, that people would stick it out for 2020 and then retire in 2021. But we're worried that's going to happen again and again, and we'll keep losing staff faster than we can replace them at the bottom, said Dr. Unson. It just makes no sense not to be addressing a very simple problem that is having a disproportionate impact that far exceeds any nominal benefit to the Treasury. We have an ageing workforce and it's driving people out. But the only way we're going to get through the next 5 to 10 years is by retaining every possible member of staff we can. In the Central Belt, where you've got large hospitals in teams of 30, you can smooth it out, but in small hospitals like my own, or in the Highlands, Dumfries and Galloway, Ayrshire, the peripheries, you've got small teams. It's really difficult to recruit, and if you lose that one key consultant, it can be the difference between a viable service and a service that collapses. Dr. Unson said that he also had a very significant worry that there will be an exodus of young doctors to Australia and New Zealand now that the borders have reopened, and where much lower rates of COVID over the past 2 years means treatment backlogs have been minimised. In Scotland, the NHS remobilisation strategy is banking on the creation of a network of dedicated elective hubs capable of delivering an extra 40,000 planned procedures a year by 2025-26. While welcoming the aim, Dr. Unson cautioned that risked destabilising acute care without a substantial increase in frontline staff. The Scottish Government has set a target to recruit 1,500 new clinical and non-clinical staff for the National Treatment Centres by 2026. The worry is that this is going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, said Dr. Unson. Without a fundamental increase in the number of people we've got, all you're going to do is take people who are working in very pressurised district generals and move them into the hubs that offer a better working life. He stressed that hospitals are not overwhelmed by the total number of A&D attendances or admissions, which both remain below pre-pandemic levels, but because too many beds are being occupied by patients well enough to leave. Dr. Younson said, "The whole system is clogged up because there's no space in social care, so the whole hospital is full of people who are delayed discharge, which means there's no beds for the acutely unwell people, who then end up backed up in A&E, which in turn means that ambulances can't unload, so then there's no ambulances to respond to the emergencies in the community. The whole system is ground to a halt, and every day you're swapping risks. The risks of someone being looked after in an A&E department when that's not the right place for them, versus the risk of moving them to an overstretched ward, versus the risk of discharging a patient sooner than they should be going home. These are the pressures we're seeing day to day, but the impact of that is that planned care is being kicked into the long grass, and if you're on an elective orthopaedic waiting list, you're essentially going nowhere." He added, "I would be very nervous if I were someone needing health and social care right now, because the whole concept that the NHS will be there for you at the point of need is a bit shaky. It does feel like we're moving into a very two-tier system where if you can afford to pay, you're probably going to get a better service, be that paying for your own social care because the council-run services aren't there, or because you need an elective procedure and you end up paying for it because otherwise you'll be waiting 4 years. That's not the way it should be, but unfortunately, I think that we're going to end up with a twin-track system for quite some time." The Scottish Government has stressed that NHS Scotland's workforce is at record levels and that it has ploughed significant additional funding into social care, including £62 million to enhance care at home capacity, £48 million to increase the hourly rate of pay, £40 million to provide interim care arrangements, and £20 million to enhance multidisciplinary teams. Funding is also being used to rapidly scale up hospital-at-home services. This article is by Helen McArdle. The Herald, Wednesday the 11th of May 2022. News. Coalition of 45 Scots groups calls for radical plans to fix broken food industry. This article is by Martin Williams. An alliance of 45 civil society organisations is calling for a new network of glasshouses and an independent watchdog as part of radical plans to fix the broken food system to make Scotland healthier and more environmentally friendly. The Scottish Food Coalition, which includes consumer rights charity Citizens Advice Scotland, trade unions such as the Scottish Trade Union Congress, environmental groups such as RSPB Scotland, and anti-poverty campaigners such as Nutrition Scotland, want action, having compiled evidence that shows Scotland's food system causes a staggering amount of negative consequences for our own health, natural environment, and wider society. They warn that the current system of growing, distributing and wasting food is driving the growing rates of diet-related disease, contributing significantly to climate change, and is the leading cause of biodiversity loss. They say that it also does not deliver on food security, as in Scotland, nearly 10% of people worry about putting food on the table, while the Good Food Nation Bill, currently going through Parliament, currently proposes placing duties on the national government and local councils to produce food plans. Campaigners argue this does not go far enough. Among a host of recommendations, it calls for the establishment of an independent food commission to set ambitious and measurable targets and to make the right to food a legal right. It is also suggested new investment should be put into the development of a new glasshouse sector in Scotland, both on brownfield urban sites and in remote and island communities, using renewable energy to grow low-carbon, nutritious food and veg. And they say ministers should also commission and fund new training programmes for small-scale agroecological farmers and market gardeners. Professor Mary Brennan, chairman of the coalition, said, "Our food system is broken and our people, animals and fish, planet, communities and economy are suffering as a result. We must and can do better when it comes to food. To make progress, we urgently need robust legislation that brings together and harness our collective knowledge, power, resources and passion." Its analysis warned that poor diet contributes to 4 of the top 5 risk factors for early death, ill health and disability in Scotland. They warn it places a huge burden on public services and society and account for the largest proportion of food's hidden costs, ahead of the damage caused to nature. In 2020, the average adult Scottish diet was 40% above the recommended daily energy intake and was too high in calories, fats, sugar and salt, and too low in fruit, vegetables and fibre. In the latest Scottish Health Survey, 67% of adults in 2020 and 30% of children in 2019 were classified as overweight or obese. The Alliance's dossier warns that the food chain charity believes that 103,000 people over 65 are at risk of suffering from malnutrition in Scotland. The coalition questions the use of pesticides, fertilisers and imported animal feedstocks, saying it characterises the intensive industrialised agricultural model, including Scotland's. They say that these are damaging in terms of carbon emissions, as well as to soil and water quality and carbon storage. The Alliance says the environmental and financial cost of soil erosion alone, through the loss of valuable nutrients and pollution, is estimated at £50 million per year in Scotland. Avoidable food waste was estimated to account for 1.5 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent emissions and costs us £1.1 billion a year, or £470 per household. Among 50 recommendations for national and local policies, it suggests a new food commission, which it said would help curb tensions, conflicts and missed policy opportunities caused by the different local and national government portfolios, departments and public bodies with responsibility for food issues. The Alliance said it would provide advice and scrutiny to the government. This is critical for the food system's just transition, as Scotland's economy responds to the climate, nature and health crisis. The Commission's remit must cover all food-related issues, for example, from community food growing to migrant fisheries workers' rights, from farmed salmon's welfare to the obesogenic food environment, from ending the need for food banks to the wider impact of pesticides. It said the Commission would act like the UK Committee on Climate Change and recognise the need for joined-up policy across departments and between local and national government. It would undertake research and make recommendations based on evidence and current progress towards targets, and bring out an annual report on the state of Scotland's food system and on progress made on realising the right to food. The group's master plan also calls for incentives so that fishing businesses limit damaging practices like dredging and trawling by ensuring quotas are conditional on good practice and workers' rights. And they say there should be mandatory reporting on supply chain waste by large businesses and a requirement that delivery services take back packaging or meet the disposal costs. The coalition said to improve public health, protect and restore the environment and deliver a raft of economic and social benefits, we will require a concise set of measurable outcomes. These should be crafted based on public consultation with local flexibility in how they are delivered and with explicit mechanisms and funding for independent monitoring, research and innovation. In this way, our food system can be remodelled and people's lives transformed. This is no pipe dream. Communities the length and breadth of Scotland are already showing how it can be done, from Shetland's vibrant local food economy to the charity that supports older people to access healthy food in Dundee, from the Perth Food Waste Company, working with local authorities to overcome barriers to recovering green and food waste, to the small businesses joining forces to operate short supply chains in Dumfries and Galloway and the borders. A Scottish Government spokesman said, "We have been working across government through an extensive programme of measures to deliver on our ambition to be a good food nation." The Good Food Nation Bill, introduced to Parliament last year, will ensure Scottish ministers and relevant authorities will produce Good Food Nation plans to support social and economic well-being, the environment, health and economic development. The wide-ranging plans required by this bill will help ensure good quality, locally sourced and produced food is a practical everyday reality for everyone. As part of the development of the bill, we committed to considering the need to create a statutory body, such as a food commission, and are giving careful consideration to the options available to provide any oversight role for delivery of the provisions in the Good Food Nation Bill. This article is by Martin Williams. The Herald, Wednesday the 11th of May 2022. News. Fasten your seatbelts and get ready for the winter of discontent 2.0. This article is by Ian McWhirter. You don't expect the old lady of Threadneedle Street to engage in dodgy media manipulation, but the Bank of England Governor, Andrew Bailey, pulled a blinder last week. He delivered the most damaging announcement made by a British central banker in 25 years. That inflation is going to hit 10% this winter on the eve of the local elections. That effectively buried it. But it won't stay buried for long. The Queen's speech yesterday was inevitably dominated by the cost of living crisis, yet Boris Johnson's beleaguered government had little to offer apart from pious promises about levelling up and growth, plus the vaguest hints about future tax cuts. They know what's coming. They're keeping in financial reserve measures to deal with price rises in the autumn budget, but they will be blown away by hurricane inflation. Britain is facing a crisis comparable to the 1970s. Every £10 note in your pocket will be worth only £9 by early 2023. The bank also announced a rise in interest rates to 1%. It starts ratcheting up lending costs this winter. That means mortgage costs rising too. According to Paul Johnson of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, a 1% increase in interest rates doubles mortgage payments after people come off fixed rates. Mr. Bailey went on to forecast the biggest squeeze on incomes since the 1970s. Oh, and there's almost certainly to be a recession. The Governor had earlier called on workers not to ask for big pay increases, which might fuel yet more inflation. Supermarket stackers and hospital workers will no doubt be only too glad to pay for his incompetence. The winter of discontent 2.0 will kick off with another 40% hike in energy payments this autumn, just as we're getting used to the current one. According to Scottish Power boss Keith Anderson, average bills will rise to a staggering £3,000 a year, enough to put every family living on average wages into fuel poverty. Mr. Anderson wants the government to step in with a £10 billion rescue package, but that is optimistic given the state of the UK finances. Mr. Johnson didn't announce it, but a windfall tax on the energy companies is now inevitable. BP cannot rack up record profits while millions are freezing. If the fossil fuel companies have any sense, They'll try to forestall the windfall by offering their own concessions to retailers like Scottish Power. Tory backbenchers calling for tax cuts are whistling in the wind. And forget Partygate, this is an economic storm that will likely turf Mr Johnson out of number 10. No government can survive reductions to living standards on this scale. Nor indeed will it enhance the prospects for an independence referendum next year. Indeed, Mr Bailey may have cancelled IndyRef too. Nicola Sturgeon will, as ever, blame the crisis on Westminster mismanagement, but independence is going to be a very hard sell next year. Setting up a new currency, ending fiscal transfers from the UK and directing a hard border against Scotland's biggest trading partner will seem like Brexit on steroids. The Scottish economy is in no fit state for such an upheaval in the midst of an inflationary debt crisis. During the pandemic, the UK government spent like there was no tomorrow. Rishi Sunak financed the furlough and other packages by borrowing more than £300 billion, more than at any time since the Second World War. Britain's debt pile topped £2 trillion, which was manageable when interest rates were low, but will becoming crippling now inflation and interest rates are rising. Those who thought the pandemic showed that governments can borrow and spend without limit, like followers of modern monetary theory, are about to have a sobering reminder that they can't. The government is already spending more on debt repayment than on defence. Mr Johnson has promised he will not return to austerity. The public spending cuts that followed the financial crash in 2008-2009, but Mr Sunak will have no choice but to constrain spending as UK debt rises and tax revenues dwindle. Public services will suffer and jobs will be lost just as inflation peaks. The Bank of England says it has no responsibility for taxes and spending, which is true, but it cannot evade its irresponsibility over inflation. It was quantitative easing coupled with near zero interest rates that destroyed the bank's credibility. Did they not realise that printing nearly £1 billion of funny money through QE was going to have a long-term impact? Did they think they could keep interest rates at their lowest level since the 18th century indefinitely? History will be astonished that the institution, whose sole task is to keep inflation to 2%, allowed it to get so disastrously out of control. Historically, UK interest rates have averaged around 4%. During periods of past inflation, the late 1970s or the early 1990s, interest rates invariably rose to double figures. They topped out at 15% during the ERM crisis in 1992. Nothing like that is forecast now, but there is no doubt that interest rates will have to rise fast. Mr Bailey's statement will go down in history as the moment Britain finally realised it had been living in a post-pandemic's fool's paradise. It will mark a return to an era when the country was run ragged by economic disruption as workers tried to keep pace with inflation and the middle classes lost their savings and lost their lifestyle. Ominously, the 1970s also began with a war and a quadrupling of oil prices, the Israel-Arab War of Yom Kippur. History may appear to be repeating itself, and in some ways it is. However, the industrial trade unions of today are a shadow of their former selves. The bank is hoping that workers will not respond to the cost of living crisis by a return to the mass strikes and industrial chaos of the 1970s. That may be true. The response will be different this time. But when people finally realise what is happening to their living standards, there will be fury. It'll make the 1979 winter of discontent look like a summer of love. Our columns are a platform for writers to express their opinions. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Herald. This article is by Ian McWhirter. The Herald, Monday the 9th of May 2022. News. Nicola Sturgeon fails to set out IndyRef 2 bill timetable Despite growing sense UK failing. This article is by David Ball. Nicola Sturgeon has been unable to set out a timetable for a referendum bill on independence to be published despite insisting there is a growing sense the UK is not serving the needs of the nations. The First Minister said she is updating the very positive case for Scotland to leave the UK after Sinn Féin won the most seats, 27 out of 90, in last week's Stormont elections in Northern Ireland. This entitles Sinn Féin to have one of its representatives take up the post of First Minister, which would be the first time a non-unionist politician has held Northern Ireland's top post. Meanwhile, local government elections in Scotland saw the SNP emerge again as the winners, with Ms Sturgeon's party securing more seats on councils than any other party, despite being in government for 15 years. While Ms Sturgeon admitted there was different factors at play in the elections in Scotland and Northern Ireland, she claimed it was now obviously the case that there are very big fundamental questions being asked in every part of the UK about UK governance in the years ahead. She added, "I think there's a growing sense that the UK, in its current state, is not serving the needs of Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, or perhaps even England appropriately. And I think we will see big changes in the years to come, and I'm convinced one of these changes will be Scottish independence." She congratulated Sinn Féin, which supports a united Ireland, on its success, with Ms Sturgeon saying, "For them to become the largest party in Northern Ireland is, as you know, a development of truly historic proportions." But she also stressed the importance of parties at Stormont coming together, working together, and getting the Northern Irish Executive up and running again. The Scottish First Minister and SNP leader hailed her own party's success in the local elections as astonishing, saying it was really quite something to have such a result after 15 years in power at Holyrood. Ms Sturgeon insisted a mandate for a second independence referendum had been won in the 2021 Scottish Parliament elections, which saw the SNP and the pro-independent Scottish Greens win a majority of seats at Holyrood, with both parties pledging to have a vote on the issue in this parliamentary term. Ms Sturgeon noted that both the SNP and the Greens had increased their share of the vote in last week's council elections, as she said work towards a second referendum would continue. Asked for when a bill for the future independence referendum could be brought before the Scottish Parliament, the First Minister said that she would set that out in due course. Any such legislation, however, is almost certain to face legal challenge from the UK government, who are opposed to the holding of such a vote. Ms Sturgeon also said her government would start to set out white papers for independence in the very near future. It has been almost a decade since the previous independence white paper, which contained more than 700 pages, was published, with the First Minister promising the new paper would be refreshing and put the very positive case for independence. This article is by David Ball.
Recorded from the Herald on the 11th of May 2022, from the sports section. Celtic winger Jota named Premiership Player of the Month for April, by James Kearney. Celtic winger Jota has been named as the Premiership's Player of the Month for April. It is the third time the on-loan Benfica forward has won the monthly award after being named as the winner in October and November. The Portuguese has made a big impression for Ange Postecoglou's side this term, and supporters are hopeful that the 23-year-old will complete a permanent transfer this summer. Upon receiving the award, Jota thanked everyone that had supported him as he urged his Celtic teammates to get their tilt over the line in the final two matches of the league season. "I am delighted and really humbled to win this award after a great month for the team with some top results and performances," he said. "I have just been one part of this success. Everyone at the club has been fantastic, working together closely as a family to try and achieve what we want, and with our fans right behind us, we are nearly there. We have 2 big games to go, and we want to give these the same energy and quality as we have all season. Thank you so much to everyone who has supported us. That article was by James Kearney. Recorded from the Herald on the 11th of May 2022, from the sports section. Police Scotland make Rangers' largest gathering Seville has ever seen statement ahead of Europa League final, by Aidan Smith. Police Scotland's official border policing Twitter account has warned airport travellers of a busy spell due to Rangers' involvement in the Europa League. Tens of thousands of Jaros fans have been scrambling for flights and tickets since last Thursday when Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's side beat RP Leipzig in the semi-final at Ibrox to set up a meeting with another Bundesliga outfit, Eintracht Frankfurt, in the May 18th final in Spain. Police Scotland tweeted, "With the largest gathering Seville has ever seen about to take place, it's going to be a busy week for all Scottish airports. Please leave extra time to pass security and follow all guidance from your airline RA security procedures." Ali McCoist has joked he would gladly be fired at Buchanan to get to see Rangers play in the Europa League's final in Seville next week. McCoist, former Rangers manager and striker, and these days a presenter and pundit, was speaking on TalkSport in the context of hot air balloons being unviable as a mode of transport to Spain, as supporters look at all possible options. He said, "I tell you right now, I would go to the cliffs of Dover and put myself on one of those cannons like the circus, put on a crash helmet on, and get fired across the channel to go and see Rangers in Seville. That's what I would do. If there's any circuses out there and they want to sponsor me, I am willing to do that. Get myself in a cannon, as long as they have a big massive net around about Calais for me to land, that would be marvellous." That article was by Aidan Smith.
Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday 11th of May 2022. Arts and Entertainments. 5 new books to read this week. New releases span nail-biting thrillers and sci-fi mysteries by Herald Magazine. Fiction. 1. A Tidy Ending by Joanna Cannon is published in hardback by the Borough Press, price £16.99, ebook £7.99. Joanna Cannon is a master of twisty tales, and A Tidy Ending is a roller coaster ride. Linda is a downtrodden wife. She cooks, cleans and runs around after husband Terry. She's taken for granted by her mother, her husband and her colleagues at the charity shop she works at. Looking for a bit of excitement, Linda starts researching for Rebecca, the woman who used to live in her home on Cavendish Avenue. She imagines what life could be like, picturing herself in the pages of the glossy magazines that fall through the letterbox. Then there is a murder, and things start to fall into place for Linda. Hats off to Cannon for piecing together a sinister story that could take place in any residential estate. 9 out of 10. 2. Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel is published in hardback by Picador, price £14.99, ebook £8.49. Exploring survival in parallel worlds, Sea of Tranquility is a sci-fi mystery unfurling across time through 3 very different people. Edwin St. Andrew is in newly discovered Vancouver Island in 1912. Novelist Olive Llewellyn visits Earth on a book tour in 2203. And Gaspare Jacques Roberts is a detective born hundreds of years later, yet intricately intertwined in the timeline. Existing centuries apart, they are united by a moment of metaphysical disturbance, a feeling of suddenly being in several places at once. Emily St. John Mandel is a master of pandemic apocalypse fiction, and her third novel is no exception. Weaving together a panorama of pandemics, moon colonisation and time travel, Sea of Tranquility is a poignant novel grounded by the humanity of life, death, love, loss and family. 7 out of 10. People Person by Candice Carty-Williams is published in hardback by Trapeze, price £12.99, ebook £6.99. Imagine growing up with a dad who loves his gold Jeep more than you. This is the reality for the 5 half-siblings we encounter in People Person. Yet apart from their shared absent father, they have little else in common, until a life-altering and dramatic event kickstarts a bumpy relationship between the quintet. People Person is the next offering from Candice Carty-Williams, author of the hugely successful Queenie, meaning you'll likely approach it with high expectations. A fast-paced novel, it won't take you long to lap up, but the drama, violence and blackmail can border on chaotic and slightly ridiculous. However, the relationships between the 5 leads keep you reading. Diverting away from the nuclear ideal of family, this modern take is refreshing and uplifting. 7 out of 10. Non-fiction. 4. Men by Raven Smith is published in hardback by Fourth Estate, price £14.99, ebook £7.99. Known for his witty social media presence, funny Vogue columns and ability to capture the zeitgeist, it's hard not to like Raven Smith, but unfortunately perhaps is better suited to essays and small bites of content. In Raven Smith's Men, an autobiography loosely based around the men in his life, from the important to the fleeting, it all feels a bit frenetic. There are too many similes and metaphors, and Smith jumps from topic to topic with blinding speed. Perhaps each chapter would be better suited as a solo piece, rather than a full book. Getting the balance between witty and insightful is tough. At times Smith nails it, such as the sections discussing his relationship with his stepfather, or the finale analysing the patriarchy and why he's so obsessed with men. But other times he misses the mark. The part on eating disorders felt a bit off. Smith is still a delight, albeit a graphic one. Prepare for some gross out sections, but potentially not in a full book. 7 out of 10. Children's Book of the Week. 5. The Offline Diaries by Yomi Adegoke and Elizabeth Uvebienye is published in hardback by HarperCollins Children's Books, price £12.99, ebook £7.99. 12-year-old Addie is dreading starting a new school until she meets Shanice, a shy girl with a pink journal just like her own. Despite their differences, confident Addie and introverted Shanice form a fast friendship, talking online through a messaging app, Chatback, although they share most of their problems and worries offline with their diaries. But when Addie attracts the attention of the two most popular and mean girls in school, can the friendship survive? A fresh and original take on growing up, Yomi Adegoke and Elizabeth Uvebienye create two distinctive and believable Year 8 characters trying to navigate the social maze of school and whether fitting in is truly the most important thing. 8 out of 10. By Herald Magazine. Herald Scotland recorded on Wednesday 11th of May 2022. Arts and Entertainments. Neil Young and Bob Dylan, The Curse of Being a Completist. By Mark Eady. I have an addiction, but my problem, and I count my lucky stars for this, doesn't extend to harmful substances. Instead, I'm hooked on something else entirely. My need to obtain a complete collection of some type of thing or another. I'm a completist. The inconsequential nature of my issue is not lost on me, and to describe it as an addiction may be pushing it. But as with other first world problems, like not being able to find the end of the sellotape or losing half your dunked biscuit in a cup of tea, it's up there with the most trivial of dilemmas. So where's the harm? A third of people in the UK collect something. You name it, and feel free to let your imagination run wild here. I guarantee someone out there will be hoarding it. But it can be a heavy burden to bear. My obsession revolves around acquiring as many records, documentaries, books, magazines, etc. that have either been produced by or about two giants of popular music, Neil Young and Bob Dylan. With back catalogues extending nearly 60 years each, the choice is staggering, and just like pushers, the respective record companies are experts at drip-feeding fans' product, teasing out bootlegs, archived material, old concerts, and countless song versions for mugs like me to splash out on. If keeping ageing rock stars topped up in caviar and classic cars was a pastime, then I've been a willing contributor for years. I dread to think about the hundreds of pounds I've spent, but before I start sounding too creepy, I have enough self-awareness to know there are limits to my obsession. Indeed, this article is in some ways a manifestation of that. I'm sure there will be deep psychological driving forces at play. Perhaps I subconsciously felt deprived as a child and now seek comfort in meaningless material things. Who knows? It might even be natural. The need to cache items is visible in many species, as seen in squirrels, woodpeckers and moles. However, the desire to collect stuff purely for the satisfaction of possessing them is uniquely human. For me, completism isn't necessarily about fandom per se. It's more about the sense of reward you get from finding that obscure recording. The downside of hoarding, however, is the irrational anxiety it can create if you're unable to obtain the record you must have. Any sensible person could reasonably argue that the multitude of streamed content on offer has rendered the concept of completism redundant. After all, nearly every song ever made is at the end of a swipe on your phone. But this ignores the pleasure derived from simply owning the physical item in the first place. The joy of holding a limited edition LP or import with that elusive extra song. I'm guessing the thousands of enthusiasts who attend record store days feel the same way. A phenomenon known as the endowment effect describes our tendency to value things more than once we own them. I fear I'm edging into that category. Just last weekend, Young released a tranche of official bootleg recordings from the early 70s. I won't rush out and buy them. Even I can see they're playing me for a sucker. But I know full well the temptation will prove too great and the records will eventually find their way onto my shelves. A friend once asked me how many versions of Like a Rolling Stone does anyone need to own. I sagely replied I didn't have a clue, but if there is a number, it's not enough. It's just never enough. Our columns are a platform for writers to express their opinions. They do not necessarily represent the views of the Herald. By Mark Eady.
From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 12th of May 2022. From the news section, more than 100 fines now issued by police over UK government Partygate saga. By Hannah Roger. The Metropolitan Police have confirmed more than 100 fines have been issued over the Partygate scandal. The force is still investigating a series of 12 events across Whitehall, including in 10 Downing Street, which took place during lockdown. In an updated statement this morning, the force confirmed the number of fines they have recommended now exceeds 100. Prior to the local elections on May the 5th, their updated figure was 50, 20 across 2 leafing days, and 30 for a gathering to mark the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's birthday. The statement from the force read, as of Thursday the 12th of May, Operation Hillman, the investigation into breaches of COVID-19 regulations in Whitehall and Downing Street, has made more than 100 referrals for fixed penalty notice, FPNs, to the Acro Criminal Records Office. These referrals have continued to be made throughout the period since our last update on Tuesday the 12th of April, and the investigation remains live. The latest tally will make grim news for the Prime Minister as he looks to shake off the whole saga. Although he's only been fined once, some within government suspect he will receive further fines, with reports that Mr Johnson was in attendance at half of the 12 events being investigated. So far, he has refused to resign, despite calls from within his own party, and the rebellion among Tory MPs to oust him appears to have died down. It was thought that should the Tories do badly in the local elections, more within the party would call for his resignation and submit a letter of no confidence to the 1922 committee of backbench MPs, which can trigger a leadership contest. However, despite the humiliating results for the Conservatives, which saw them lose more than 400 council seats across the country, no such rebellion appears to be taking hold within Westminster. This latest batch of fines, however, could lead to some within the party calling for action. And that article is by Hannah Roger. From the Herald Scotland, Wednesday the 12th of May 2022, from the news section, Royal Mail to ramp up drone deliveries benefiting Scotland's islands. By Emma Sabliak. Royal Mail has announced plans to introduce 50 new routes where deliveries will be made using drones over the next 3 years, which could improve the mail service to Scotland's islands. The first routes, which will see the use of unmanned aircrafts, could include the Shetland Islands, Orkney Islands and the Hebrides, moving away from the use of ferries and aircraft, which can be disrupted by bad weather. Under a partnership with logistics drone company Windracers, and subject to Civil Aviation Authority approval, the move will provide faster and more convenient services for remote communities, said Royal Mail. Announcing plans to use up to 200 drones over the next 3 years, Royal Mail expects the aircraft to reduce carbon emissions and improve the reliability of island mail services. Royal Mail has conducted 4 drone trials over the last 18 months, including flights on the Isle of Mull in Scotland, the islands of Scilly off the Cornish coast, and between Kirkwall and North Ronaldsay on the Orkney Islands. Drones used in the trial can carry up to 100 kilograms of mail for 2 daily return flights between the islands, with letters and parcels then delivered by the local postman or woman. Simon Thompson, Chief Executive of Royal Mail, said, "On-time delivery, regardless of our customer's location or the weather, whilst protecting our environment, is our goal. Even though we go everywhere, Royal Mail has the lowest CO2 emissions per parcel delivered. This initiative will help reduce our emissions even further." Stephen Wright, chairman of the Windracers Group, said, "The middle mile of supplying logistics, especially to remote locations, has long been overlooked by this industry and is ripe for innovation. We've spent the last 5 years focusing on developing the most commercially viable essential logistics drones, so we're truly delighted to be working with Royal Mail on this ambitious and pioneering deployment of autonomous aircraft." And that article is by Emma Sabliak. From the Herald Scotland, Thursday the 5th of March 2022, from the news section, ScotRail staff threatened to boycott route due to brawling teenagers, by Ellie Forbes. ScotRail staff threatened to boycott troubled routes plagued by unruly passengers after a ticket examiner was left traumatised trying to eject brawling teens from a train. The train crew member was confronted by a gang of youths hitting a younger boy with a bottle and pouring alcohol over him on a Ballot Glasgow service on Sunday. She contacted the British Transport Police but was told that officers had been diverted to deal with a trespasser on another line and did not arrive until after it was over. The Rail, Maritime and Transport Union says staff would boycott trouble spots if action was not taken. The ticket examiner says she feels her safety has been jeopardised every day at work and that it's taking its toll on her mental and physical health. She said, "I was aware that the notorious young team, about 15 to 20 young teenage boys, boarded the service at Alexandria. One of them, who was wearing a light green hoodie and carrying a bottle of alcohol, headed towards 3 young boys and challenged one of them, then proceeded to hit one of them with his bottle and poured the alcohol all over him. By this point, the rest of the young team were all bundled into that compact area and were going nuts. 2 of them were physically attacking one of the boys. The other 2 innocent boys just sat in shock, looking terrified as their pal got beaten up. I shouted to get them off the train and no one was listening. When we got to Renton, as I was physically removing some of the young team off the train, they were trying to push past me to get back on. However, I was stood firm in the doorway and had to shout to the driver to shut the door. The boys were continuing to shout abuse and trying to figure out a way to get back on. Luckily, the doors closed and we got away. The young boy who suffered the attack was too scared to report anything, but what I witnessed was a horrific ordeal. I feel traumatised at what I have witnessed, and I feel physically sick. My blood pressure was sky high. Every day I come to work, I feel my safety has been jeopardised. This is taking its toll on my mental and physical health. I'm not happy with their, BTP, response. British Transport Police turned up, took a brief statement, and advised me they had been en route to my incident, but were told to turn around and go to another incident at Hillington involving a trespasser. I feel that some unknown trespasser took priority over my own safety and that of paying customers. She said she had to end her shift early. Because of the incident, I would not be returning to duty until further notice. RMT Scotland organiser, Mick Hogg, said there should be more police patrols on trains and at least 2 ticket examiners on every service, rather than the current single one. He said, "If the situation does not get fixed, RMT and ASLEF will instruct their members not to run trains into the affected hotspots or routes until staff can go to work and be safe. Our railway is becoming a magnet for antisocial behaviour and nothing is getting done about it. It's just a matter of time before there is a fatality." Chief Superintendent Jill Murray, BTP Scotland Commander, has already warned of an emerging threat of youth and antisocial behaviour on trains and buses. In March, Transport Minister Jenny Gilruth agreed to consider an RMT call for a new law to ban disruptive passengers from ScotRail, like they can be from football grounds. A BTP spokesperson said, "Through partnership working with ScotRail and Police Scotland, we're working tirelessly to deter criminality and antisocial behaviour on the railway network, and we have been increasing patrols in the Balloch line using targeted operations to deter offending. Where offences involving youth take place, we regularly engage with schools and campus officers to identify those responsible and deal with them accordingly. We will take action as the railway needs to be a safe place for everyone using it. ScotRail Security and Crime Manager Stephen Elliott said, "The safety of our customers and employees is our number one priority. Antisocial behaviour, whether that's physical violence, verbal abuse or any other form, is completely unacceptable. Everyone has the right to go about their day in peace, so we will continue to work with the authorities to ensure that anyone responsible for antisocial behaviour is brought to justice." And that was a report by Ellie Forbes.
Recorded from the Herald on the 12th of May 2022. From the sports section, Celtic winger James Forrest signs 3-year contract extension. By James Kearney. Celtic winger James Forrest has signed a contract extension that will keep him at Parkhead until the summer of 2025. The 30-year-old found himself in and out of the starting 11 this season, and the occasional injury has kept the Scotland internationalist sidelined, but still racked up 32 appearances in all competitions this term. The wide midfielder is the fourth most decorated player in the Glasgow club's history, with 10 league titles, 5 Scottish Cups and 5 League Cups to his name, and manager Ange Postecoglou is keen to see the one-club man add to an already impressive legacy. "James is my kind of player and has that attacking intent that can open up defences to make goals, not only for himself but for others as well," Postecoglou told the Celtic website. "He's been a great servant to the football club thanks to his brilliant quality and attributes, and those have made him a proven contributor to the club's success. You only have to look at his medal collection to see that. I know we will get more of this from him next season and beyond, and I'm delighted that this deal has been finalised." That article was by James Kearney. Recorded from the Herald on the 12th of May 2022. From the sports section, Rangers Europa League final kit selection confirmed by UEFA. By David Irvin. Rangers will play in an all-blue kit in the Europa League final, UEFA have confirmed. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's side will wear the traditional home shirt but with blue shorts and socks instead of the usual white and black for domestic matches. There were fears among supporters that a kit clash with Frankfurt would force Rangers into a change to their black away shirt or purple third kit, but that is not required. Instead, with the blue shorts and socks, Rangers will be able to wear their home shirt for the showpiece final in Seville. The Rangers keeper will wear the yellow goalkeeper kit for the final, with Eintracht Frankfurt's keeper in an orange strip. The Bundesliga side will compete in their third strip for the final next week, within preferred to their red away kit. Frankfurt will wear the all-white strip in the final, meaning the officials will be in black in Spain next week. You can see the confirmed kit selections from UEFA below. That article was by David Irvin.
The Herald, Friday the 13th of May 2022. News. Babcock, Edinburgh University, launch blade testing. This article is by Brian Donnelly. The world's first rapid testing facility for tidal turbine blades, which researchers say can speed up development of marine energy technologies while helping to reduce costs, has opened in Scotland. Fastblade's pioneering technology will stress test blades made from composite materials which must withstand harsh ocean conditions for 20 years, more quickly and using significantly less energy than any other facility of its kind, the team says. Based in Rosyth, Fife, the £4.6 million facility aims to maintain Scotland's position at the forefront of tidal energy development. Fastblade is a partnership between the University of Edinburgh and engineering company Babcock International and supported by a £1.8 million grant from the UK Government via the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, EPSRC, part of the UK Research and Innovation, UKRI. The facility's 75-tonne reaction frame is capable of exerting powerful forces on turbine blades, more than 50 feet long. Tests on blades are carried out using a system of powerful hydraulic cylinders, which in less than 3 months can simulate the stresses placed on the structures during 2 decades at sea. It replaces the complex forces to which tidal turbines are exposed at sea using unique digital and hydraulic technology systems developed by engineers at the University of Edinburgh. The facility, funded by EPSRC and the University of Edinburgh, has received support from Edinburgh Innovations, the university's commercialisation service, throughout its development. Professor Concor O'Bradich, head of School of Engineering at the University of Edinburgh, said Fastblade will be the world's first dedicated fatigue test facility for tidal turbine blades and will help this emerging industry provide clean, reliable, renewable energy at a reasonable cost to customers. Neil Young, Engineering Director for Babcock, added, "Collaborations like this are fundamental to help us and the wider engineering industry create more research opportunities and secure longer-term investment into digital and data skills, an area that is significantly growing in demand for Babcock and our customers."
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 13th of May 2022, from the sports section, Seville Mayor reveals Rangers supporter Europa League fan zone details for ticketless fans, by Aidan Smith. Seville Mayor Antonio Munoz has confirmed that there will be a fan zone for ticketless fans during the Europa League final. Tens of thousands of Rangers fans will travel to Spain for the Light Blues' first European final in 14 years, although Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's side have only been allocated 9,500 tickets for the 43,000 capacity Ramon Sanchez Pizjuan Stadium. And now ticketless fans can breathe a sigh of relief as Gers supporters will be able to gather together for their biggest match in years. Munoz told the Daily Record, "Yes, that's how it is planned. Its location and operation will be communicated soon. We are aware that fans will travel without tickets. It is not the ideal situation, but we are going to work to give the appropriate response to those fans. We are aware and we are preparing a large area to be able to give the appropriate response. There is a coordination table that includes UEFA, the Spanish Football Federation, the City Council and the delegation of the Government of Spain, in which the local police and national police are present, which is analysing all the forecasts of both people to come with a ticket like those who travel without it. Seville has already played host to major sporting, cultural or institutional events of national importance and international scope in recent years. Recently, the finals of the Copa del Rey or the European Championships have been held. We have also two clubs, such as Sevilla and Betis, with extensive experience in European competitions. The city is ready." And that was a report by Aidan Smith. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 13th of May 2022, from the sports section, Tom Rogic reflects on magical moments as Celtic hero pens emotional Parkhead exit message, by Aidan Smith. Tom Rogic says Celtic will always hold a special place in his heart after he ended an almost 10-year stint with the Parkhead club. Celtic made the shock announcement today that both Rogic and long-term teammate Neil Bitton will be leaving the club in the summer. First to join was Australian internationalist Rogic, who signed from Central Coast Mariners during the January transfer window of 2013, having just turned 20 years old a month earlier, and he made his Celtic debut a month later. That was the first of 271 games, during which he netted 46 goals, while picking up no fewer than 6 championship medals, 5 Scottish Cups, and 5 League Cups for a 16-medal haul. And speaking after his exit was announced, Rogic said, "I want to sincerely thank everyone at the club and all our supporters for everything that has been given to me while I have been at Celtic. It has been a phenomenal journey, with some magical moments. It has been an honour to be part of this experience. It has been a privilege to play for the Celtic supporters. The best in football I have ever experienced, and the great times I've been part of will stay with me forever. While I am so sad to leave, I feel so proud to be part of a team that has delivered the title again for our fans. The club is in a great position, and I know the manager will take the club on and deliver more and more success. Celtic will always be in my heart and part of my life, and I wish the club and our fans nothing but success for the future." And that was an article by Aidan Smith.
Herald Scotland recorded on Monday 16th of May 2022. Arts and entertainments. Ukraine victorious as Italy thwarts Russian attempts to hack Eurovision. By Herald Staff Online. Russian hackers attempted to disrupt Saturday's Eurovision Song Contest, Italian authorities have said. Ukraine's Kalish Orchestra were the winners of the competition, with their entry Stefania receiving the biggest share of the public vote. However, during voting, the Italian police's cybersecurity department blocked several attacks on network infrastructure by the Killnet hacker group and its affiliate Legion. In February, in the wake of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the European Broadcasting Union moved to exclude Russia from the contest. Legion had called on other pro-Moscow hackers to try and bring down the official site of the event. However, they were thwarted, though the EBU said they had noticed irregular voting patterns in the results of 6 countries. More than 8 million people in the UK tuned in to watch the finals, which saw Sam Ryder finish second, Britain's best result in 20 decades. The TikTok star topped the national jury vote with 283 points, beating favourites Spain and Sweden with Spaceman. In a statement, the BBC said, Sam's performance was simply out of this world and we couldn't be prouder of him, achieving the best result in 20 years for the United Kingdom at the Eurovision Song Contest, including winning the jury vote. Kalish Orchestra's performance was incredible and generated a reaction both in the arena and around the globe like no other. We offer huge congratulations to Ukraine on their win. In a statement after the contest, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the country looked forward to hosting next year's event in the besieged city of Mariupol. He said, Our courage impresses the world, our music conquers Europe. Next year Ukraine will host Eurovision. We will do our best to one day host the participants and guests of Eurovision in Ukrainian Mariupol, free, peaceful, rebuilt. I'm sure our victorious chord in the battle with the enemy is not far off. After Kalish Orchestra's performance, frontman Ole Siuk made impassioned plea from the stage urging the world to help to free fighters still trapped beneath the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol. Help Azovstal right now, he implored. Martin Osterdahl, Eurovision's executive supervisor, said in a statement that the organisation's attention turned to next year's competition and its unique challenges. The Eurovision Song Contest is the only cultural event that truly unites Europe. This year it's been more important than ever to bring millions together through our common values and love of music. Now we will begin planning for 2023 with winning broadcaster UAPBC. Obviously there are unique challenges involved in hosting next year's competition. Ryder found fame covering songs on TikTok during lockdown, amassing 12 million followers and catching the attention of global stars including Justin Bieber and Alicia Keys. He was selected in a new collaboration between the BBC and global music management company Tap Music, which also revamped the promotional campaign. The new strategy included ensuring Ryder's single Spaceman got played in BBC Radio 1 instead of Radio 2 and targeting smaller countries such as San Marino, Serbia, Croatia and Malta, which have the same voting powers as larger countries such as Germany. By Herald Staff Online.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 16th of May 2022, from the sports section. Another Rome success boosts Novak Djokovic's hopes ahead of French Open. Novak Djokovic sealed his 6th Italian Open title with a 6-love 7-5 victory over Stefanos Tsitsipas on Sunday and insisted he could not have asked for a better lead-up to the Roland Garros. The Serbian has endured a tumultuous 2022, being deported from Australia in January to miss the first Grand Slam of the year, before his decision to remain unvaccinated contributed towards a number of tournaments being skipped due to entry restrictions imposed by various countries. Most nations are now relaxing rules, and Djokovic will resume his quest for major number 21 later this month, when he competes in the French Open, and he will head there in form after a successful week in Rome, where he failed to drop a set. To some extent it's a relief, because after everything that happened at the beginning of the year, it was important for me to win a big title, especially with Grand Slams coming up, where obviously I want to play my best, the world number 1 told a press conference. I could not ask for a better lead up to Roland Garros, really. Serbian Open finals, really working my way through the tournament physically. Then Madrid, Open, better performances, but still maybe not as sharp in those decisive moments. And here, everything kind of came together and clicked. I'm going to Paris with definitely confidence and good feelings about my chances there. Djokovic's failure to compete at the Australian Open and the subsequent furore which followed down under made the headlines across the globe. The 20-time Grand Slam champion is eager to draw a line under the whole saga ahead of this month's French Open. Speaking after his 1 hour and 37-minute battle with Tsitsipas, Djokovic added, "It's something I've never faced before, so that amount of pressure and everything I was feeling in the first few months of the year, as much as I felt pressure in my life and my career, that was something really on a whole different level. But I feel it's already behind me. I feel great on the court, mentally as well. I'm fresh, I'm sharp. Yeah, it's just something that happened in the past." After producing a vintage opening set in Rome, Djokovic was 5-2 down in the second before he roared back to triumph and become the oldest Italian Open winner at the age of 34. It proved to be a family double after Djokovic's 7-year-old son also won his first tournament on Sunday. "Well, the journey started successful. My son won the tournament today. I just received that news. A sunshine double today," the Italian Open winner revealed. "If he wants to embark on this journey, I guess I'll have to embark with him too. Of course, I'd be thrilled if he plays tennis." Earlier in the day, Iga Swiatek secured a 5th straight title by beating Ons Jabeur to successfully defend her Italian Open crown. The 20-year-old Pole has been unstoppable since taking over as world number 1 from Ashley Barty, with her last defeat coming in Dubai back in February. Swiatek did not drop a set in Rome and eased to a 6-2, 6-2 victory over 9th seed Jabeur for her 28th consecutive win ahead of the French Open, where she will be an overwhelming favourite to claim a second Grand Slam title. Jabeur was herself in an 11-match winning run, having won her biggest title in Madrid last week, but had negotiated a significantly more troublesome path in making it to the final at the Foro Italico. Swiatek, who had lost her last 2 meetings with Jabeur, stamped her authority in the match early on and looked in total control at a 7-4 love up. Jabeur attempted a fight back, winning 2 games in a row, but Swiatek withstood intense pressure to hold on to the 7th game and clinched her first match point soon after. "I'm going to try and do step by step, just thinking of the next match as I did in these tournaments," she said of the French Open. "I already know I did some great stuff this season, so I feel like I can just play freely and not think I have to win some tournaments or I have to win some matches." And that article was unattributed. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 16th of May 2022, from the sports section, Celtic star Carol Starfelt hits back at Rangers fans with social media message after being taunted on plane, by Aidan Smith. Carol Starfelt has hit back at Rangers fans after being taunted alongside teammate Jota on a plane yesterday. The pair were filmed and pictured on a Ryanair flight full of Rangers fans as he jetted to Seville for the Europa League final. One Ibrox fan placed a Rangers sticker on Jota's hat during the flight, and the pair were also victims of taunts throughout the journey. Starfelt reacted to the flight with a social media post where he simply wrote, "Respect to champions." Meanwhile, Starfelt admits he learned quickly the demands of playing for Celtic as he hailed the leaders in the changing room for inspiring them to the title. The Swedish defender had a difficult start to his Celtic career after being pitched into the French Premiership opener against Hearts 24 hours after teaming up with his new colleagues. Celtic lost that game and their subsequent 2 away matches, but Wednesday's 1-1 draw with Dundee United made it 31 league games unbeaten and saw Ange Postecoglou's debut season title triumph officially confirmed. Starfelt, who was one of 15 new arrivals following last season's barring campaign, told Celtic TV, "It's a mentality you have to develop when you play for Celtic. It comes with it. It's from the staff. It's the demands of the fans also. You have to go out and win every week. It's something I have improved a lot since I came in, and I'm sure a lot of the guys will say the same. To get the winning mentality, it's not only in the games but also in the training. We had a little bit of a rough start. We had a lot of new players, but we have had some great personalities. We had a very good leader in Ange, and many of the guys in the dressing room have been big leaders. Everyone has contributed. It's been a tough journey. We've been working very hard, but now we can look back at the successful season. We've really enjoyed the journey as well. It's unbelievable. This is what we aimed for the whole season. It's a proud moment for all the players, the staff, their families, the fans as well. And that article was by Aidan Smith.
The Herald, Tuesday the 17th of May 2022. News. Hugh Young, Aberdeen, Asia focus. Inflation trouble could trigger social instability in UK. This article is by Ian McConnell. A veteran international fund manager has warned high inflation could trigger social instability in the UK and other countries, declaring it needs some very visible help for the people worst affected to keep the rich in power. Hugh Young, head of Edinburgh-based financial giant Aberdeen's Asia operation, meanwhile highlighted his belief that more investors were watching China's attitude to Taiwan in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And he declared, hopefully China has been put off a little by what has gone on. The Bank of England forecast this month that annual UK consumer price index inflation would now exceed 10% later this year. Asked about the UK inflation picture, Mr. Young replied, "It is happening everywhere in the world, to be honest. We are experiencing the same in Singapore, which is totally dependent on imports of food, energy prices. It is not just the UK, it is everywhere. The rich will have enough money. Yes, they will have slightly less money, but still rich, while the poor will be forced to make some horrible choices. This is a big problem globally." He added, "I think it can cause social instability in certain places. You need the combination of circumstances. It could cause it in the UK. I'm not so sure anywhere is immune from it. It needs some very visible help for the people worst affected at the lower rungs of the economic scale just to keep the rich in power. I think every society is facing that." Mr. Young highlighted how the Russian invasion of Ukraine had made investors focus more on China's attitude towards Taiwan. He said China's attitude towards Taiwan remains steadfastly unchanged. It is ours. It has been a central part of policy from day one. It is not the attitude that has changed. Xi Jinping has occasional displays of force. You have had Chinese aircraft fly into Taiwanese airspace. I think there has been more people watching what has gone on with Russia and Ukraine and thinking, what if China does the same? It has always been a possibility. I wouldn't assign zero chance to the possibility. It is not zero. Mr. Young added, China, is not hand in glove with Russia on Ukraine. It has been fairly cautious in the way it supports Russia. I think it is trying to remain as neutral as possible, but people in the West have put it squarely in Russia's camp. It is clearly more in Russia's camp than it is in the West. There must be a niggling suspicion that if China ever did the same in Taiwan, the stock market would disappear for the international investor. That is clearly an extreme, but we would have said the same thing 3 months ago about Russia. Mr. Young highlighted his belief that there remained so much opportunity in Asia, but also flagged the challenges. He said Asia is facing all the problems the rest of the world is facing, to a greater or lesser extent, depending on which bits of Asia. So slower growth, rising inflation, rising interest rates, all these pressures coming through. Supply chain hiccups partially due to different COVID policies, particularly in China, and politics figures. It figures everywhere. But we are seeing political change, or hopefully political change in Sri Lanka, which is a basket case at one end of the spectrum. At the other end of the spectrum is another basket case, the Philippines and Ferdinand Marcos Jr., coming to power there. It just shows how politics can affect things. Mr. Young noted the go-go stocks have come off more than the steady eddies amid stock market turbulence in Asia. And he highlighted the extent to which the investor mood towards the Chinese stock market had changed in the last 9 months. Mr. Young said China as a market has been hit hard generally. I think that is probably for a variety of reasons. It is always hard to put fingers on it, whether people have just slightly thought China. Is it in the same as Russia if something happens? There must be an element at the back of people's minds, if not at the front of people's minds. In a more fundamental sense, it is that China is slowing for a few years now. It has been designed to slow and broaden out by the powers that be. He also cited the impact on the Chinese stock market of COVID, with all the headlines we have seen, with Shanghai locking down, Beijing locking down. Mr. Young added, if one person in a factory gets COVID, it is shutting down, which is quite extreme. He flagged the Alibabas of the world, the Tencents, as examples of go-go technology stocks which have fallen in value. Mr. Young said international investors were very keen on China up until about 9 months ago, when it was all flavour of the month. He noted the smaller companies fund he runs, Aberdeen Asia Focus, has very little in China, and that people had been asking previously if it should not have more in the country. Mr. Young said, there is interesting things going on there from a company perspective. It is just trying to find the right things at the right time. Investors have switched off in a big way in the last 9 months. International investors tend to be fairly fickle. They are either all in or all out. As a stock market, China is, I would say, looking decent value rather than good value. Economic growth has certainly slowed, earnings growth has slowed. He highlighted increased regulation of Chinese companies such as Alibaba, noting they had been derated in terms of valuation as a result. However, he said this regulation was probably a good thing. Mr. Young, who is based in Singapore, said Asia was still fascinating for him. He added, there is so much opportunity out there. As an investor, it still looks very good value, but it is going to be bumpy. This year is not going to be a good year for anywhere in the world, but relative to other parts of the world, Asia remains in pretty good financial condition. This article is by Ian McConnell.
Herald Scotland on Tuesday the 17th of May. Issue of the day. Ridiculous. Harry Potter is 25. An article written by Barry Didcock, senior features writer. Harry Potter turns 25 next month, which, as well as making a lot of people feel very old, is going to put everyone's favourite boy wizard back in the headlines thanks to a slew of new publications and commemorative events. So when is the big day? June 26th is the date to circle on your wall calendar if you're a Potter-loving millennial, and in Gryffindor red if that is your wish. It was on that day in 1997 that Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone first hit the bookshops and introduced a generation of young readers to Harry, Ron, Hermione, Hagrid, Hogwarts and the rest of it. 6 more novels would follow, and by the time the last was published in 2007, both Harry and his creator, Edinburgh-based author J.K. Rowling, had become a cultural phenomenon. People actually used to queue outside bookshops when a new instalment was about to be issued. A long time ago then. Yes, indeed. Tony Blair had just become Prime Minister. Cool Britannia was in the offing. Teletubbies premiered on UK television. Titanic was bringing audiences to tears in the country's multiplexes. The UK had just won the Eurovision Song Contest. Imagine that. And a small company in Dundee launched a video game called Grand Theft Auto. Oh, and Hanson were at number 1 with MMM Bop. So, what's happening in 2022? Well, you can buy a box set of all the novels in the house colours of your choice. Go Hufflepuff. There's an exhibition of all things Potter at the Story Museum in Oxford, and on the day of the silver anniversary itself, a Harry Potter fans film will be released on social media, featuring Potterheads talking about their love of the series and their reader experience of the novels. Ahead of that, on June the 9th, publisher Bloomsbury is bringing out a special limited edition hardback version of the original novel, complete with Thomas Taylor's now iconic cover art. It shows Harry standing next to the Hogwarts Express on platform 9 3/4, rubbing his chin in a way which says, "I wonder who'll play me in the movie." And who did? Well, Daniel Radcliffe, of course, though that was a few years away. He was only 7 when the book was published and 11 when the first of the films was released. He'll turn 33 in July, which is older than Rowling was in 1997. Fun fact: Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was published in hardback, and the initial print run was only 500 copies, of which 300 went to schools and libraries. Today, they change hands for considerably more than the original £10.99 cover price. A copy annotated by J.K. Rowling herself once sold at auction for £150,000. An article written by Barry Didcock. Herald Scotland on Tuesday the 17th of May. Opinion: Sturgeon is right. Scotland can lead on climate change. A column written by Vicky Allen, senior features writer. Some are calling the First Minister's trip to the United States a wasteful indie tour. Others have been grumbling about the fact that she's centred a key speech on climate change, even as she's added to her carbon footprint a plume of transatlantic flight emissions. But frankly, I'm glad she's issuing this key message around climate. I find it rather strange that some people seem to want her to not show global leadership on the crucial issue of our times. We can mock her for telling us all something we already knew, that, for instance, we're on course for 2 degrees rise, but statements like these are needed to remind us of our trajectory in a world of multiple distractions. As Alok Sharma said 6 months after he chaired COP26, we're now in a situation where a lot of international bandwidth is taken up with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ms Sturgeon's speech focused on her ambitions for Scotland. We will lead by example in our own actions, she said. We will contribute to international energy security, and we will work with allies across the globe as we strive together to build a fairer, more secure and more sustainable world. We will also, she says, become a testbed for green technologies. I firmly believe that Scotland can lead the way and welcome these signs that we may be about to push harder, but we have to acknowledge that at the moment our mark sheet reads something like could do better. We have to be aware of the scale of the effort it's going to take. One form of leading the way, of course, is in what we say, the messages we send out, and Scotland certainly has been proving itself on that front. One of the first countries to declare a climate emergency, a net zero target of 2045, a 75% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. We also have a leader who's finally distancing us from fossil fuel, who said recently that it was not credible to suggest an increase in North Sea production as a short-term solution to the crisis caused by the invasion of Ukraine. I've welcomed all that, even when it does sound like rhetoric. But what I particularly welcome about Ms Sturgeon's speech is her emphasis on actions rather than words. We might want to look at Scotland's record in terms of action, which, while mostly good, is mixed. Oft quoted is the fact that between 2008 and 2018, Scotland's emissions fell faster than any G20 nation, largely because of the shift away from coal to renewable electricity generation in the power sector. But that was the low-hanging fruit. Greater challenges are ahead, and right now there are some areas in which we are failing to make significant progress, in which indeed we could do better. Last year, a report into Scotland's emissions from 2019 found that we had failed to meet our annual reduction target for the 3rd year in a row. Last December, Lord Debden, chair of the UK's Climate Change Committee, warned that the Scottish Government was unable to prove it would hit its promise to cut emissions by 75% by the end of the decade. Clarity and transparency on policy, he said, supported with detail on how these policies will be delivered, has been lacking. It feels like too many pieces of the jigsaw are still missing. Partly they're missing because Scotland is not in control of some aspects. Energy is reserved to Westminster. The UK government is in control, and its oil and gas regulator is approving new projects, including, the Sunday Times reported this week, the previously rejected Jackdaw field. We also still await the publication of the Scottish Government's energy strategy, which has been put back from this spring to this autumn. Meanwhile, another key piece of the net zero jigsaw is the retrofitting and decarbonising of our buildings. And while we do have a heat-in building strategy, it's hard to imagine how, financially, it will be achieved. Though the Scottish Government has committed £1.8 billion to this cause, it's a drop in the ocean compared to the £33 billion it's been suggested this will cost. Councils are questioning how they deliver their part of the equation. The challenges remain huge, and in the middle lurks the question of whether an independent Scotland could be freer to lead on climate mitigation. The answer is, yes it could, but progress on climate has to be made right now, without delay. It can't be put off until a moment of independence. That's why I'm glad Ms Sturgeon is making it her central message. I want us to do our part and do whatever we can to create vital global change. A column written by Vicky Allen.
And that was this week's The Herald podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.